It seems like every couple months we get another comedy star complaining about the state of comedy in this modern era. Whether it's Adam Devine complaining that Marvel is ruining real comedy in films, or it's Todd Phillips saying that he can't make movies like he used to because of Me Too, it's honestly exhausting. It's like people saying that you couldn't make Blazing Saddles today, which, yeah, you couldn't make Blazing Saddles today. It already was made. In the 70s. I expect these types of comments coming from Phillips, but Adam, come on. You were in 3 Pitch Perfect movies. What are those if not comedies? And Elizabeth Banks, director of the movies, just came out with the godfather of this generation in Cocaine Bear. Just because nobody wants to see Game Over Man on Netflix. You're right. I'm sorry, Ash. I want to be positive. When thinking of the state of comedy in 2023, I feel like I have to bring up the directing team of John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. The duo hit it big with a film in 2011 from their script in Horrible Bosses. And in the ensuing decade, they wrote Spider-Man Homecoming, setting the tone for that whole franchise, directed the Vacation reboot Lega sequel, and it was surprisingly pretty funny, and as well, they directed this year's Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. All of these films have elements of comedy gold, even the admittedly clunky title, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. But if you want to look and see how to make a good comedy in this era, we need to look to their sophomore feature, 2018's Game Night. Before I get into the meat of the essay, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Ash would appreciate it. Game Night was directed by Daley and Goldstein from a script initially written by Mark Perez. It stars Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams as Max and Annie, a married couple who are a bit too into game nights and are struggling to conceive a child. Their weekly game night is hijacked by Max's brother Brooks, played by Kyle Chandler, leading to regulars Kevin and Michelle, played by Lamorne Morris, and Kylie Bunbury, and Ryan, played by Billy Magnuson, along with Ryan's new partner Sarah, played by Sharon Horgan, have to go on an adventure that eventually turns into an actual criminal conspiracy. Now, one thing that makes comedy work, especially in the modern age, but always, is being genre-specific. What Adam Devine doesn't understand is that most comedies, apart from the improv-heavy comedies of the mid-2000s, aren't just a bunch of funny people riffing for 90 minutes. There is a story with a genre, and they follow the rules of that genre while cracking jokes and being heightened to a comedic level. Examples of this are Shaun of the Dead being a perfect zombie movie in the vein of Romero, while also being a funny movie. Tropic Thunder, a satire of the Hollywood system that has genuinely exciting action sequences. And even Caddyshack, which, while being coke-addled on set, and Harold Ramis just letting these comedy legends do what they do, is, at its core, a coming-of-age film, and it hits all of the beats necessary to be such. You need stakes, you need structure, you need character, and I don't want to pick on Adam Devine too much because I'm not trying to be mean, but the projects that he has been a creative force behind is just man-children screaming about things and smoking weed. And while that can be fun in 20 minutes with commercial breaks interspersed in between there, it can get grating when it comes to feature-length projects. In an interview discussing the Dungeons & Dragons movie back when people could talk about projects before the strikes, John Francis Daley made a comment about the creation of the film that could be translated to Game Night as well. He said, "We wanted to create a film that would be appealing to all audiences, whether you knew D&D or not. For that to work, we needed a sort of scaffolding and infrastructure for the movie to be enjoyable and engaging. That sentiment should be put into every creative work you make. Ground your story in something that wide audiences can latch onto so that when you get wild with the story, the characters, the lore, etc., there is something that keeps the audience on board and allows them to appreciate it on their terms. With Game Night, the film takes the trappings of a run-of-the-mill action thriller story, but it puts regular, if not quite funny, characters into the plot. This enhances the film in two ways. First, audiences are primed to understand that these types of stories have twists and turns, which allows for the twists and turns in this film to be much wider and broader and more out of left field for comedic effect. Second, it mines humor from rational responses to irrational situations. If you don't laugh at scenes where regular people have to do trauma surgery on the fly, I don't know what your sense of humor is, because it's wrong. Game Night, like many comedy films, is an ensemble, a story that follows multiple characters. And the characters are broken up into pairs: Max and Annie, Kevin and Michelle, Ryan and Sarah. But the most important thing when doing an ensemble, especially with the tight runtime of this film, hour and 40 minutes, you have to establish the character dynamics quickly, and we as an audience have to know who these characters are before the plot kicks in and we get lost in that. If the audience doesn't know who the characters are by the time the plot kicks in, you've lost them. And Game Night sets these characters up brilliantly. Take the first scene. It's a pub trivia night, and the first lines of the film are uttered by Jason Bateman. Literally right after the production logos fade out and we get into the movie, Max holds up a beer and says, "Who cares about winning? Let's get drunk." A sentiment shared by patrons of many a trivia night I've gone to. However, he goes over to the bartender and then orders 4 shots of vodka for his opposing team and 4 shots of water for his team, showing that he cares deeply about something as trivial as trivia. And when he and Annie answer a trivia question at the same time, the audience gets to see their meet cute and they stare into each other's eyes. They operate at the same wavelength. They take trivia seriously. They take games seriously. They are goal-oriented and will do whatever it takes to win. So, in less than a minute, in a simple scene at a bar, we get to know who these characters are, we get to see their competitive nature and what they will do to win, and we get to see how perfect these two are together. Some of the best writing in a comedy film I've seen in a decade. And of course, throughout the movie there's further development, what with their struggling to have a baby, and what the anxieties come with. Do they want to have a kid? Will that change their dynamic, change their lives? It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's emotionally resonant, and it does the trick. The second couple in the film are Kevin and Michelle, and they are great as well. They are a couple that have been together since middle school, and the filmmakers decide to mine a bunch of comedy from this relationship by revealing that Michelle has had sex with a celebrity while the two were on a break over a decade ago. The actors play their relationship so naturally, and while there is tension that this revelation brings to their dynamic, we don't see it as cataclysmic. It's played for laughs, and Lamorne Morris is channeling his 7 years on a network sitcom to make this material work as well as it does. And the payoff is just fantastic, especially when the guy they have portraying the celebrity is an actual professional impersonator of said celebrity. I'm not gonna say who it is, but I will just put this here.
"You can't lock us in here. You see hate, put us in here."
And leave it at that. Side note, that network sitcom comment may come across as a dig at him, and I can tell you absolutely, unequivocally, it is not. New Girl is a really good show, and Lamorne Morris may be the MVP of the series. Throughout the series, his character Winston devolves into the broadest reading of his character in the best way possible. Then we have the characters of Sarah and Ryan. Now, Ryan is the prototypical himbo. He's good looking, he's charming, and he's quite dim. It honestly makes sense that Max and Annie would have this character on their roster of game night regulars, because you know, they like easy competition. And it is made known early in the film that Ryan taps into a stable of interchangeable Instagram models as his partners for game night, as he is the only one who is not in a relationship. And this works to...
These are the elite, the very best,
white people.
let's say mixed reception. However, in this game night, he does something different and brings along Sarah, an accountant from his office. And it's a typical sitcom relationship. A dumb guy paired with a woman he usually wouldn't go after and also doesn't take any of his shit. Perfect situation to mine comedy gold. You've seen this 1,000 times, roll the snare drum. But instead of being that over and over, repetitive and repetitive, like some comedies I don't want to talk about, there's actually growth. The characters learn to care about each other. The characters learn to like each other. To the point where, in the end of the movie, when they're still together at a game night in the future, we buy it and we like it. And now I get to the MVP of this film. Officer Gary, played by Jesse Plemons, is quite possibly the greatest thing to ever happen to comedy in the 2010s. See, Gary, the police officer who lives next door to Max and Annie, he used to be a regular in their game nights, but that was before his divorce. And it turns out they liked his wife better than him, and so they don't invite him anymore. But it's clear that he was way more invested in the camaraderie of game nights than they were, leading to several hilarious, awkward situations, as well as some of the best character reveals in cinema history.
You said sneak in so RoboCop wouldn't see us.
In every interaction with anyone from the group, Plemmons hits his comedic timing perfectly. In the monotone despondency of a man who feels betrayed, who has lost the love of his life, and who still holds her in high regard.
Well, thank you not to besmirch my ex-wife.
He plays a pivotal role in the plot, he gets to show off his action star chops, and he has a weird relationship with his dog. Honestly, he's worth the price of a rental. And then you've got fantastic stable of stars in smaller comedic roles. You've got Brooks, played by Kyle Chandler, who is a smarmy bastard who constantly belittles his brother Max at every turn. I don't want to get too far into the plot because part of the reason this movie is good and worth watching is because the plot is pretty off the wall. But let's just say he is a very likable scumbag. Jeffrey Wright brings his natural bravado to a glorified escape room employee, as well as having some real comedic chops that he rarely gets to show. Chelsea Peretti is fun in her role, Michael C. Hall is a real rat bastard, and Danny Houston is there. Comedy, especially one that is so heavily reliant on its script, like this one is all about letting the actors play within the bounds of the script. And I give Daly and Goldstein big props for letting the cast do what they do best. Now let's talk briefly about the craft that is brought on display in game night, because for a comedy, there's quite a bit. Every detail on screen has been carefully put there to enhance the atmosphere and the comedy of the film. Look no further than the establishing shots. In several establishing shots, or exterior shots of a location that just tells the audience where a scene takes place, the filmmakers utilized an in-camera effect called a tilt shift, where the tilt changes the focus of the lens in relation to the sensor, allowing for a shallow depth of field with lens blur, and the shift alters the image's perspective and allows for a more panoramic style of shot. Now, I know most of that is going to go over your heads, but in layman's terms, it takes real footage and makes it look like it is a miniature. Like the people, the cars, the houses, they're all elaborate models on, say, a board game. You all know what establishing shots look like. They're generic. They're boring. They're 2 seconds long and they wash over the audience. But Daly and Goldstein wanted to put their creative stamp on a brief shot that just shows where the location of a scene takes place, and allowed for said shot to be fully incorporated to the theme of the film. That is fucking craft, and it needs to be praised. Furthermore, the filmmaking techniques in the action scenes are quite impressive as well. And they both show impressive action as well as enhance the comedy. The first big action sequence, when the kidnappers come and take Brooks away, this sequence is played for laughs as there's cuts from the frantic action taking place back to the game night crew that is just eating cheese. They are blissfully unaware that the action that is unfolding before their eyes is genuine, because they are primed to think that everything is game night. But the choreography of the sequence is genuinely fun. There is a frenetic energy brought to the sequence, and while it is clearly very strictly choreographed, it emphasizes the improvisational nature of a man trying to escape two armed men trying to take him away. Well done, Kyle. And also early in the film, the second action sequence takes place when Max and Annie realize that this is genuine and not part of game night, and they're trying to take Brooks to safety. The camera placement and the effects express the dire nature of the situation they find themselves in, and it is very well done. And finally, I can't discuss the craft and the action in game night without talking about the impressive one-shot revolving around the egg. Every single member of the game night crew gets an opportunity to shine in this sequence. There are pitfalls that come with an extended oneer. They can come across as pretentious or make the audience try to see how they actually did the shot. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Maybe whenever I see a one shot that is not fully engaged with the story, I just start thinking, how did they make that one shot, rather than, this is pretty cool. But that's not the case here, or at least in my opinion, it's not. We're locked in on the egg, we're watching the action unfold, and eventually we realize it's been over a minute and we haven't had a cut yet. It is really good, it is really fun, and I dig it. And the most important thing about a comedy movie is the comedy. And the comedy in Game Night is freaking hysterical. I'm not gonna ruin jokes. That's not what this channel is. But it implements planting and payoffs, callbacks, wonderful sardonic humor that Jason Bateman is known for, and a comical amount of blood in places where you probably don't want blood to be. I can go on and on about it, but you know. Yes, so if I can tell Adam Devine anything, it would be this. Please stop using Marvel as an excuse as to why comedy movies aren't being made. It's short-sighted, it's objectively wrong, and it makes you come across as petty. In 2023 alone, we have had Joyride, Cocaine Bear, The Blackening, No Hard Feelings, They Cloned Tyrone, Barbie, Strays, Polite Society, Bottoms, and coming up later this month is Ethan Coen's Drive-Away Dolls. And I haven't seen all of them yet, and I probably won't end up seeing all of them. Well, at least one of them, cough cough Strays. I don't want to give you any ideas. But that's 10 comedy movies in 9 months, with all of them, apart from one, getting exclusive theatrical releases. We can complain to high heaven that movie studios are not making comedy movies anymore and are only making big budget movies that have international appeal. But that's only because we as a society have shown that apparently that's the only movie you're gonna shill your $20 out to go see in theaters. So if you're complaining that comedy movies aren't being made anymore, when there is a comedy movie that comes out, sit your ass in the theater and watch it. So, instead of going to the theater, watch Game Night. It's on Hulu. It's really funny.